Hey everyone, welcome to another deep dive, this time into
Sartre?
Sartre. Yeah, Jean-Paul
Yeah.
Sartre's Being and Nothingness.
Oh, yes.
Have you read this?
I have read this.
You have read this. It's
many times.
Many times. Yeah, it's a big one.
It's a big one.
And we are using the 1966 edition, translated by Hazel Barnes.
Yeah.
Professor Hazel Barnes.
Who did a fantastic job.
Yeah, so this is one of those books that I know a lot of people have heard of.
Yes.
But maybe haven't actually sat down and gone through it.
Absolutely.
So we're gonna do that for you today.
We
In
are.
this deep dive, we're gonna really dig into it.
All right.
So I guess the place to start maybe is why is this an important book?
Okay, so this is a really important book because Sartre is trying to answer a very fundamental question, which is, what does it mean to be human in a world where there is no God?
Right. Yeah. And he's writing this in the, mid-20th century, post-World War II.
When people are really struggling with these questions.
Yeah, there's a lot of disillusionment going on.
Totally.
So Sartre is coming in and kind of giving people a new way to think about.
A new way to think.
Without relying on those traditional structures.
Without God.
Without God.
Right.
Yes.
So he starts off by kind of
He starts by rejecting a lot of traditional philosophical ideas.
Okay.
Like this idea of dualism. That there's the mind and then there's the body.
Okay.
Or that there's appearance and then there's essence.
Oh, like the thing in itself?
The thing in itself, yeah.
Okay.
And he says, look,
Yeah.
we need to stop focusing on these abstract categories and instead we need to look at phenomena. What appears to us in our consciousness.
Okay, so it's like instead of trying to figure out what a thing really is, like what its essence is,
Yes.
we should just focus on how we experience it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You don't need to know.
Like a sunset.
You don't need to know the physics of a sunset. Right.
Exactly.
To appreciate the beauty of the colors.
Yeah.
So he uses this example of a red object.
Okay.
He says, look.
A red apple.
A red apple, right? There's no separate abstract redness existing out there in the world.
Right.
It's just our perception of the apple as being red.
Oh. So it's the experience that matters.
It's the experiencing phenomenon. I think I can get down with that.
Yeah.
It's kind of freeing in a way, right?
It is freeing.
Yeah.
It's freeing.
So he gets this from this idea of phenomenology. Right. It's just a whole other.
So phenomenology is this philosophical movement that really emphasizes the importance of experience.
Okay.
And it was developed by a philosopher named Husserl.
Husserl. Okay.
And Sartre was really influenced by Husserl.
Okay.
But he kind of takes it in his own direction.
So he's building on it.
He's building on it.
Okay.
And one of the key concepts that Sartre develops is this idea of the pre-reflective cogito.
The pre-reflective cogito?
Yeah. Try saying that 5 times fast.
I am not going to try that.
It's a mouthful.
So break that down for me.
Okay, so the pre-reflective cogito is basically the most basic level of awareness.
Okay.
It's the awareness that we have before we even start thinking about anything.
So before I even realize I'm thinking about something,
Yes.
I'm already aware.
You're already aware.
On some level.
On a pre-reflective level.
It's like, I don't know if you've ever had this experience where you wake up in the morning and you're just
yeah.
there.
You're just present.
Yeah. And then a second later.
All the thoughts start coming in.
All the thoughts come in.
Right. The to-do list, the worries.
But for a split second.
You're just aware of being.
It's just aware.
That's the pre-reflective cogito.
Okay, that makes sense. So it was a pure awareness.
Pure awareness.
Without any content.
Exactly.
Okay, and Sartre is saying that that's the foundation.
Yeah, the foundation of our being.
Of our being, okay.
And this is where things get really interesting because he says that consciousness is characterized by nothingness.
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 How can something be characterized by nothingness?
Right, it sounds paradoxical.
Yeah.
But think about it this way.
Okay.
A rock just is.
Okay.
It doesn't think about itself.
Oh, a rock is a rock.
A rock is a rock.
Yeah.
It's solid. It's unchanging.
It's just there.
It's just there. Okay. But you as a conscious being, you're constantly questioning your existence. You're thinking about your purpose.
All the time.
You're aware of what you lack.
Definitely aware of what I lack.
What you're not.
Yeah.
You desire, you dream, you strive to become something more than what you currently are.
So it's this lack.
Is it lack?
This awareness of our incompleteness.
Yes.
That creates a kind of a void within us.
A void of nothingness.
And that's what Sartre calls nothingness.
That's it.
Okay. So this nothingness, it's not just
It's not just an empty space.
An empty space? It's like an active force.
It's a driving force.
It's what makes us want things.
Exactly.
That's what makes us strive.
It's what makes us human.
To be better.
To be better, to create, to love.
Wow, okay, so we're beings defined by nothingness.
In a sense, yes.
Constantly striving to become something we're not.
That's the human condition, according to Sartre.
That's a lot to think about.
It is.
I'm going to need a minute to process all of this.
All right.
So we're back, and we're talking about Sartre's being and nothingness.
Yes.
And this idea that consciousness is characterized by nothingness.
That's right. A void or lack that drives our desires and ambitions.
Yeah, and we were talking about negation.
Yes.
Which is the ability to distinguish between what is and what is not.
Exactly. And all of this leads to one of Sartre's most radical concepts, freedom.
Freedom. Okay, so if we're defined by this nothingness, does that mean we're completely free to choose who we are?
That is precisely what Sartre argues. He believes that we are radically free.
Radically free.
We are not determined by our path or upbringing or even our genetics.
So it's all on us.
We are constantly making choices, and those choices shape who we are.
But that's a lot of pressure.
It is.
It's kind of scary.
It can be exhilarating and terrifying at the same time.
Yeah, no kidding.
Sartre says that anguish is a fundamental part of the human experience.
Anguish.
Anguish arises from the realization that we are utterly responsible for our choices.
So like existential dread.
Exactly. There's no God, no predetermined plan, no one to tell us what to do. We are completely on our own.
So we're just like thrown into existence.
Thrown into existence, and then we have to figure it out.
That's heavy.
It is.
I can see why people would want to like run away from that kind of freedom.
And that brings us to another important concept, bad faith.
Bad faith.
Bad faith is a way of denying our freedom.
So like pretending we don't have a choice.
It's a form of self-deception where we try to convince ourselves that we're not really free, that we're just products of our circumstances.
Oh, like blaming my parents for my problems.
Exactly. We're saying, I can't get a promotion because my boss doesn't like me.
Yeah, we've all done that.
We've all been guilty of bad faith. At some point, it's a very human response.
Yeah, it's easier than facing the truth.
But Sartre argues that it's a form of inauthenticity.
Inauthenticity.
We're not being true to ourselves, to our own freedom.
Okay, so if we want to live authentically, we have to embrace our freedom.
We have to take ownership of our choices, even when it's difficult.
But how do we do that without getting completely overwhelmed?
Well, for Sartre, the first step is awareness.
Awareness.
We need to recognize when we're falling into those patterns of self-deception, when we're trying to avoid responsibility.
So like pay attention to our excuses.
Exactly. Notice when we're blaming others or playing the victim.
And then what?
And then we need to make a conscious effort to act authentically, to choose what we value and live in accordance with those values.
So we're creating ourselves through our choices.
That's the essence of Sartre's philosophy. We are free to choose. And in choosing, we create ourselves.
But it's not just about making random choices.
Right? It's about making choices that are consistent with our values, our projects, what Sartre calls our fundamental project.
Our fundamental project.
Your overall aim in life, the guiding principle that informs your decisions and actions.
So it's like our purpose.
You could say that, but it's not something that's fixed or predetermined. It's something we create through our choices.
So it can evolve over time.
We're constantly shaping and reshaping it as we go through life.
That makes sense, because we're not the same person we were 10 years ago.
Exactly. And this brings us to another fascinating aspect of Sartre's philosophy, his view of temporality.
Temporal, you mean time?
Time, yes. But for Sartre, time isn't just something that happens to us.
Okay, how so?
It's something we actively create through our consciousness.
I don't think I follow.
Think about it. Our experience of the present is always shaped by the past and the future.
Okay, I can see that.
We interpret the present moment through the lens of our memories, our expectations, our hopes and fears.
So the past isn't just gone.
It's still with us in the way we experience the world right now.
And the future, too.
Yes. We're always projecting ourselves into the future, making plans, setting goals, anticipating what might happen.
It's like the past and the future are always influencing our present.
Exactly. And that highlights the fact that we're not just passive observers of time. We are actively creating our experience of time through our choices and actions.
Wow, so even our experience of time is tied to our freedom.
Absolutely. We're not just stuck in the present moment. We're constantly reaching back into the past and projecting ourselves into the future.
And those choices, those projections, they shape who we are.
They shape who we are becoming.
This is all very mind-bending.
It is.
But there's one big piece of the puzzle we haven't talked about yet. Other people.
Yes, the other. That's where things get really interesting and maybe a little more complicated.
Because if we're all busy creating our own realities, How do we even acknowledge the existence of other people?
That's a question we'll tackle in the final part of our deep dive.
We're back, and we're still swimming around and being in nothingness.
Still here, yes.
And we've been talking about all these really interesting ideas.
Freedom, responsibility, bad faith, yeah.
Yeah, all the heavy stuff.
The big question.
And we ended last time talking about the other...
Right, other people.
Other people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how does that fit into all of this?
So the other is really important for Sartre because he says that our relationships with other people, they really impact how we see ourselves.
Okay, so like how does that work? Because we've been talking about like this radical freedom, right? Like we can create ourselves.
Right, and that's the interesting thing because when we encounter the other, it kind of disrupts that freedom.
In what way?
Well, imagine you're walking down the street, right? You're just kind of lost in your own thoughts, feeling totally free.
Okay, yeah.
And then suddenly you realize that someone is staring at you.
Oh, yeah. I hate when that happens.
It's uncomfortable, right?
Yeah, it's like you suddenly become aware of yourself like as an object.
Exactly, and that's what Sartre's talking about. He says, in that moment, you're no longer just a subject experiencing the world.
Right.
You become an object for the other's days.
So it's like they have the power to define us.
In a way, yes, and that can be really unsettling.
Yeah, for sure.
But it can also be liberating.
Liberating, how so?
Because it forces us to confront the fact that we're not alone in the world.
Right.
Our sense of self, it's not entirely our own. It's shaped by how other people see us.
Okay. That makes sense.
So the question is, how do we deal with that tension?
Between our own freedom and how other people perceive us.
Exactly.
It's tricky.
It is. And Sartre suggests a few possible responses.
Okay, like what?
Well, one is to try to dominate the other.
Like assert our dominance.
To kind of like overpower them with our own freedom.
Okay, but that doesn't sound very healthy.
It's not. It can lead to conflict, and it's not a recipe for authentic relationships.
What's another response?
Another response is to try to merge with the other.
Merge with them.
Like lose ourselves in the other.
Oh, like becoming completely dependent on them.
Exactly, but that's also not a good solution because then we're denying our own freedom, our own individuality.
So we're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place.
In a sense, yes.
So what's the way out?
Well, Sartre doesn't give us a clear-cut answer.
Of course not.
He believed that relationships are always going to be this kind of ongoing negotiation.
A balancing act.
Yeah, between our need for freedom and our desire for connection.
Okay, I can see that.
So it's about recognizing the complexity of it all.
Not trying to oversimplify things.
And not trying to control the other.
Right, just accepting that it's messy.
Yeah, relationships are messy.
And I guess that applies to all kinds of relationships, not just romantic ones.
Absolutely. Families, friends, colleagues, even strangers we meet on the street.
We're always interacting with the other.
We are.
So Sartre's philosophy, it's not just about abstract ideas, it's about how we live our lives.
It's about the choices we make, the relationships we form, how we navigate the world.
It's about being human.
It is.
And it's about embracing the complexity of it all.
And that's what makes it so challenging and so rewarding.
Yeah, so if you're out there listening and you're trying to figure out this whole existence thing...
Sartre might have some insights for you.
Yeah, maybe pick up a copy of Being and Nothingness.
Give it a read. See what you think.
It's a dense read, but it's worth it.
It's a deep dive.
That's what we do here.
We do.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for listening.